Hello there, it's Tom here, and this is chapter 42 of Gunnerkrigg Court, Catalyst. Now, this chapter is the beginning of book 5, which is called Refine. And it's after Annie and Parley and Smitty have gotten their new roles in the court. And this is just kind of a fun chapter where I could play around with Smitty's powers in the forest and catch up with the usual gang. And also catch up with Kat's situation after the cliffhanger that the previous book ended on. And right from the start, we can see that at this point in Annie's development, she's pretty different from when she started the story. She takes things pretty lightly, and she almost seems to be kind of enjoying herself. Even though she and Smitty seem to be running from something chasing them, she seems a lot more relaxed than she has been in the past. Another thing I wanted to do in this chapter is kind of change the way that I was doing the art, especially with the backgrounds and in the forest. I was trying to do more shaded and painted backgrounds in the forest. And drawing the inside of the forest has always been something that I wish I was, just in general, better at. And even now I'm still looking for ways to get the feeling across of being inside a forest without really having to spend too long labouring over each page. But looking back on it now, I did quite enjoy how the forest looked in this chapter. Rather than Annie and Smitty seeming like they're deep inside some dark forest, there's always a green glow coming from deep in the background. And I use this when I want to show some of the lighter scenes in the forest. And kind of like I do in the main sections of the comic when they're in the court, I just change the mood of the pages just by altering the lighting a little bit. So if Annie needs to go into a darker part of the forest, I may not necessarily change how I draw it, just how I light everything. And we can see some of that in some later chapters. And another part of this section of the chapter is all the fun different creatures I get to draw, like this chick charney here, which is an obscure myth from the Bahamas. And really I treat the forest as kind of a repository for all different kinds of world myths. So it's possible that you could run into any myth that has existed in any part of the world, somewhere in the forest if you looked hard enough. And this chapter really was an opportunity for me to pull from that idea, as we see when Smitty just naturally takes to helping out these creatures. And in doing so, we can see that Andrew is actually a lot more knowledgeable about myths and creatures in the forest than even Annie is, where he's able to identify the chick charney straight away, and he knows the lore of getting good luck by helping one out. And as well as these fantastical creatures, I just wanted to mix in some regular creatures like deer and squirrel or sad horses. And during all this, Annie is pretty impressed with his work. His experience has been very different from hers in the forest, and she just takes the opportunity to sit back and watch him get to work. And this section ends in kind of a light-hearted way with the gang being chased out of the forest by this array of creatures and monsters looking for help. And we just catch up with Annie, Smitty and Parley just chatting. And in here too, I try to imply people in the background here by just very faintly shading them in. And this is not something I normally tend to do in the court, because I usually like to imply the court being a very lonely place. But here, I sort of wanted to keep up with the feel of Annie being more relaxed and being more of a regular teenager and hanging out with her friends in a kind of a semi-public place where there might be people milling around. I felt it added to the development of Annie's character. And with things looking up for her, we can just hope that they stay this way. So after this section is wrapped up, we now switch over to what Kat's getting on with. And this is probably my favourite outfit for Path. I wish I could draw her in this outfit all the time, her sort of gardening utility outfit. It's just a regular, thoughtless outfit you might put on if you're doing some outdoors work. And I just feel that it suits Path to a T. So anyway, Kat has come along with the letter that she received. And at this point I was misdirecting the leaders by making it pretty obvious even from the beginning that the letter was from a robot. It was printed on all dot matrix printer paper, and we've known ever since the bonus page for chapter 25 that robots may be prone to sending love letters to some of the students. And of course we find out that it was Bobby who wrote the letter. So Kat came all this way with the intention of having to let him down. But in reality the letter was from Path. In this section where Path is talking about what led her to writing the letter, I sort of wanted to show that she was going through a similar situation that Kat herself had been going through. A few chapters back, Kat was feeling pretty insecure and unsure of herself, and in this little sequence here I wanted to show that Path was kind of going through the same thing, and we can see that their interaction from the faraway morning chapter has been weighing on her mind, just as it had been for Kat. But unlike Kat, Path decides to embrace the idea and figured she'd give it a shot and ask Kat out. Now, for me, Kat's always been kind of a hopeless romantic. And even though she was feeling insecure a few chapters ago, when she's faced with the reality of the situation and actually being asked out by someone, her personality is such that she's just happy to jump in and try things out. And for me, this is one of the developments that I wanted to keep in mind for Kat. On a surface level, she seems to have a better grip on the world around her and acting socially more than Annie does. But there has always been this level of insecurity in Kat, and she tends to get embarrassed quite quickly, a lot more so than Annie would. So in those ways, they're very different from each other, which again is a long-running theme between the two characters. But this scene here, I see it as a step towards ditching that, where Kat starts to become a lot more sure of herself. And this becomes reflected later on in her work and choices that she makes in the future. And really, I figured this was just a fun way to give Kat something to keep her mind occupied rather than just being cooped up in a robotics workshop the whole time. So that's that chapter, and this bonus page is called Traveler, which is the same name of a side comic that I drew about another creature who didn't fit in on land and was obsessed with the ocean. And that can be read in the extra comics section, and actually deals with a bit of Path's backstory as well. And so there you go. That's the end of this chapter. Come back for chapter 43, Quicksilver.